It's Tuesday, 6:14 p.m., and you're standing in the checkout line at a Kroger in Tulsa, holding a basket with eggs, bread, and a rotisserie chicken you can't actually afford this week. The card reader blinks. Insufficient funds. You already knew it would say that. You knew before you walked in. You put the chicken back. Eggs and bread. $6.40. You pay cash because the debit card has been unreliable in a way that has stopped surprising you. The guy behind you in line, older, tired-looking himself, doesn't even glance up. Nobody in this line is judging you. That's not the part that stings. The part that stings is that you're judging you. $18,000. That's the number. Not a house, not a car, not anything you can point to and say, at least I have this. Just $18,000 spread across 2 credit cards, a medical bill from a torn ACL you didn't have insurance for at the time, and a personal loan you took out the year your car transmission died and you needed to get to work. You are 27 years old. You make $19.50 an hour at a logistics office. And tonight, standing in a Kroger parking lot with a bag of eggs and bread, you have $214.37 in your checking account and 9 days until rent. 10 years from now, you will have $3.4 million. You don't know that yet. Nobody does. Least of all, you. The ACL happened at a rec league basketball game 2 years earlier. You remember the exact sound it made, which is a strange thing to remember precisely. A small wet pop, and then the floor coming up at you slower than it should have. No insurance that year because you just switched jobs and the waiting period hadn't cleared. The surgery and the physical therapy came to $6,100 total before you'd made a single payment on any of it. You didn't get reckless with money. You didn't buy things you didn't need. You just got unlucky in the specific, boring, unglamorous way that swallows people whole in this country. And then you financed the bad luck on whatever had the highest limit. It didn't start with a plan. Nothing in this ever does. It started because your sister, Renee, 2 years older, always the practical one, sat you down at her kitchen table on a Sunday in March and said, I want to see everything. All of it. Every card, every bill, every number. You didn't want to. Showing someone your debt is a specific kind of undressing. But you were tired. And tired beats embarrassed most days. So you opened your banking app on her laptop and let her look. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she opened a blank Google sheet and said, we're going to write down every single thing you owe and every single thing you make, and we're going to stare at it until it stops being scary.
Column 1, creditor. Column 2, balance. Column 3, interest rate. Column 4, minimum payment. It took 40 minutes to fill in. Capital One, $6,200, 24.99%. Discover, $4,100, 22.9%. The medical bill, $3,900, no interest, but a collections agency called twice a month about it. The personal loan, $3,800, 11%. You stared at the total. $18,000. Written down in Renee's handwriting on the notes column next to your name, it said something that made you laugh, even though nothing about it was funny. Not permanent.
You started with the smallest one. Not the smartest math. Renee admitted that herself. The interest rate said start with Discover. But she said something that stuck with you longer than any interest rate calculation ever would. You need to win once before you can believe you'll win again. So you attacked the medical bill first, $3,900. Called the collections agency yourself, which took 3 attempts and a lot of holding music, and negotiated it down to $2,700 for a lump settlement you didn't have. You sold your gaming setup, a PS4 and a monitor and some old textbooks for $640. You picked up 4 Saturday shifts at a warehouse doing inventory counts for $16 an hour. 6 weeks later, you paid it. Gone. Not reduced. Gone. You remember standing in your kitchen after you hit submit on that payment, holding your phone, feeling something you didn't have a name for yet. Not relief exactly. More like the first time you notice a bruise has actually started to fade. The Discover card took 11 months. You called every 3 months and asked for a lower rate, which felt insane the first time. Calling a bank and asking them to like you less financially. Twice they said no. The third time, a rep named Priya said, "Let me see what I can do," and put you on hold for 6 minutes and came back with 16.9%. You didn't say anything for a second because you didn't expect it to work. You picked up a second part-time job on weekends, stocking shelves at a hardware store. $14.75 an hour, 4 hours every Saturday morning before your regular shift. $59 a week. It sounds like nothing. It was not nothing. Every dollar of it went to Discover. Capital One was the big one. $6,200 at nearly 25%. This is the one that tested you. 8 months in, your car needed brakes, $340 you didn't have, and you had to put it back on the card you were trying to kill. You cried in the parking lot of the mechanic shop. Not because $340 is a lot of money in the abstract, but because it felt like proof that this would never end, that you'd sold your PS4 and worked Saturdays for nothing. Renee didn't tell you it would be fine. She just said one setback isn't the whole story and helped you rebuild the plan around it. You added a third income stream, reselling. Not exciting, not glamorous. Clearance items from the hardware store's markdown shelf. Tools mostly, flipped on Facebook Marketplace for $15 to $40 profit each. Some weeks it was $80. Some weeks it was $220. It was inconsistent, and it was real, and it all went to the card. There was a second setback nobody warns you about either. Somewhere around month 16, when your hours at the logistics job got cut from full-time to 34 a week because of a slow quarter, you panicked. You called Renee at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday and told her you thought you should stop the payments for a month, just to breathe. She didn't argue with you. She just asked you to look at the sheet one more time before you decided anything. You did. And what you saw was that even at reduced hours, even with the resale hustle wobbling that month, you could still make the minimums on everything and still put $40 extra toward Capital One if you skipped eating out entirely for 4 weeks. You skipped it. $40 doesn't sound like the kind of number that saves anyone. It wasn't really about the $40. It was about proving to yourself, again, that the plan survived contact with a bad month. That mattered more than the money did. 2 years, 4 months. That's how long the whole $18,000 took. You remembered the exact night you paid the last of it because you'd promised yourself something. The night the balance hit zero, you were going to buy the rotisserie chicken. The actual one, not the eggs and bread version. You sat in your car in the same Kroger parking lot and ate it out of the container with a plastic fork like it was the finest meal you'd ever had. It kind of was. Here's the part nobody tells you about getting out of debt. The hardest habit isn't paying it off. It's not immediately spending the money you free up. For the first 4 months after the debt was gone, you kept living exactly the same. Same $59 Saturday shift, same reselling hustle, same tight grocery budget. Except now, instead of a minimum payment disappearing into an interest rate, that same money went somewhere new. Renee opened a Roth IRA with you that same week. First deposit, $200. It felt embarrassingly small after 2 years of 4-figure payments. It also felt like the first dollar you'd ever kept. You didn't stop the spreadsheet. That was the real trick, if there was one. The sheet just changed shape. Instead of tracking what you owed, it tracked what you kept. A new column, investments. A new column, emergency fund. You built the emergency fund to $1,000 first, painfully slowly, then pushed it to 3 months of expenses, about $4,200, which took another year. Boring. Genuinely boring. Nothing about this part of the story would ever trend anywhere. Year 4, you got a real raise. Not a cost of living bump, an actual promotion into a logistics coordinator role. $54,000 a year. And instead of upgrading anything,
The apartment, the car, the life, you kept your expenses almost exactly where they were and increased your Roth contribution to the max, then opened a taxable brokerage account for whatever was left. Index funds, mostly. Total market, boring, unglamorous, historically reliable. Renee, who by now had her own modest portfolio, kept saying the same thing every time you talked about it. This isn't supposed to feel exciting. If it feels exciting, you're probably doing it wrong.
Year 6, the reselling hustle, still running on Saturdays, had turned into something bigger, almost by accident. A guy from the hardware store, older, retiring, a man named Walt, who'd sold you your first clearance drill 3 years earlier, mentioned he had a garage full of tool inventory he never sold, wanted it gone. You bought the lot for $1,100, sold it over 4 months for $3,900. That single deal made you realize the reselling wasn't a side hustle anymore. It was a small business with margins you actually understood. You registered an LLC. You started buying liquidation pallets the way people online talked about, researched for weeks before touching one. Sold listings, not active ones. Same principle Renee had taught you with the spreadsheet. Stare at the real numbers until they stop being scary. The business had its own rough patch, too. Worth mentioning because the story would be a lie without it. Year 7, a pallet of what was supposed to be small kitchen appliances turned out to be almost entirely returns with missing parts. A $940 loss you didn't see coming. You sat with that number for a night, annoyed, embarrassed even. And then you did the thing you trained yourself to do by then, almost automatically. You wrote it down. You looked at the 11 pallets before it that had worked and the one after it that made $2,200, and you kept going. One bad pallet was not the whole story. Renee's line, still working 4 years after she first said it.
Year 8, your investment accounts crossed $2,600 a month in profit, run almost entirely on weekends. You bought a duplex. Put 15% down using savings you'd built specifically for it over 3 years. Moved into one unit, rented the other for $1,150 a month, which covered most of your mortgage. Your name was still on the same kind of forgettable one-bedroom lease it had always been on, except now you owned the building. Year 10. You're 37. You're standing in a different Kroger. Same chain, different city, because you moved for a job that paid better and let you keep saving aggressively. You have a basket with eggs, bread, and a rotisserie chicken. And this time, the card doesn't blink because there's nothing for it to blink about. You buy the chicken. You buy the good coffee, too. The $11 bag you used to walk past every single week for years. You don't think about it. That's the part that gets you. Standing in line, you don't think about it at all anymore. Retirement accounts, $610,000. Taxable brokerage, $940,000. Reselling business, now run mostly by a part-time hire you pay $19 an hour, valued conservatively at $180,000. Duplex equity, $210,000. A second small rental property you bought 2 years ago outright with cash from the brokerage account, no mortgage, $310,000. Combined, including the checking and savings buffer you keep for no particular reason except old habit, $3.4 million. You call Renee that night, not because anything happened that day, just because you talk most weeks anyway. You tell her the number. She's quiet for a second. Then she says, "Do you remember the notes column?" You do. Not permanent. She still has that spreadsheet somewhere, the original one, 11 years old now, sitting in a folder called Old Stuff in her Google Drive. Neither of you has ever deleted it. People who meet you now, coworkers, new friends, the woman you've been dating for 8 months, they see someone careful with money. Someone who packs lunch, drives an 11-year-old Civic with 140,000 miles on it, still checks receipts. They don't see $3.4 million. There's no version of you that looks like what people picture when they hear that number. No new car, no vacation photos that scream anything. Just a person who still, out of habit more than necessity now, opens a spreadsheet on the first of every month, and looks at every column. That's the whole thing, really. Not the $18,000, not the $3.4 million. The 40 minutes at a kitchen table with your sister, writing down every number until it stopped being a monster and became just information. Everything after that was just arithmetic and time. Small, slow, and completely unglamorous. Nobody claps for a spreadsheet. Nobody should have to. It was never about the applause. It was about the moment the numbers stopped controlling you and you started controlling them. You still buy the rotisserie chicken every Tuesday. Some habits you keep on purpose.